we're in a series of talks about the Faith Mind Sutra. This is the fourth talk. I think the second and third are either on or will soon be on our website if you want to listen to them. We did not record the first, so you missed that, unless you were here. So, if you're just coming in the middle of this, you'll miss certain things, but it's basically a self-contained talk, so you should be able to get something out of it. The Faith Mind Sutra is a shortish sutra, maybe a couple of pages, kind of in the form of a poem, and it's like a poem. It's very compact, and the meaning is very intensely concentrated. So because it doesn't have a lot of expansion and explanatory lines, that's partly what makes it hard. The other thing that makes it hard is it deals with ideas which are hard to see. So it's kind of intrinsically hard as well. It was written by a person called Sang-san. In Japanese, he's called Sozan. There are a bunch of Sozans in Japanese Zen. Some of them are not this one. What I'm going to do, I'm going to read you the sutra that we've dealt with so far, the lines we've dealt with so far. Then I will read you the lines that we're going to deal with today. They're about maybe 8-9 lines that we deal with at a time. And then go on to kind of talk about the lines. So this is the beginning of the sutra. There are various translations. This is the one we're using. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed, to no avail. The way is perfect, like vast space where nothing is lacking and nothing is in excess. Indeed, it is due to our choosing to accept or reject that we do not see the true nature of things. Live neither in the entanglements of outer things, nor in inner feelings of emptiness. Be serene in the oneness of things, and such erroneous views will disappear by themselves. When you try to stop activity to achieve quietness, your very effort fills you with activity. As long as you remain in one extreme or the other, you will never know oneness. Those who do not live in the single way fail in both activity and quietness, assertion and denial. To deny the reality is to miss their reality. To assert the emptiness of things is to miss their reality. The more you talk and think about it, the further astray you wander from the truth. Stop talking and thinking, and there is nothing you will not be able to know. To return to the root is to find the meaning, but to pursue appearances is to miss the source. At the moment of inner enlightenment, there is a moment of going beyond appearance and emptiness. The changes that appear to occur in the empty world we call real only because of our ignorance. Do not search for the truth, only cease to cherish opinions. So that's what we've done so far. Well, a lot of repetition in here of the same basic point. But here's today's lines. Do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such pursuits carefully. If there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind will be lost in confusion. Although all dualities come from the one, Do not be attached even to the one. When the mind exists undisturbed in the way, nothing in the world can bother us. And when a thing can no longer bother, it ceases to exist in the old way. When no discriminating thoughts arise, the mind ceases to exist. When thought objects vanish, the thinking subject vanishes, just as the mind vanishes, objects vanish. Things are objects because of the mind. The mind is such because of things. Understand the relativity of these two and the unity of emptiness. In this emptiness, the two are indistinguishable, and each contains in itself the whole world. If you do not discriminate between coarse and fine, you will not be tempted to prejudice and opinion. So, there we go. So, the first two lines that we're going to look at today are these: do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such pursuits carefully. If there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind will be lost in confusion. So these two lines, the first two lines of what we're looking at today, basically repeat the first two lines of the sutra. In the very beginning of the sutra, it says, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. So the sutra there is making a statement and saying it in a positive way. So now in this part of this sutra, it's saying the exact same thing, but it's saying it in a negative way. Do not, it says, do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such pursuits carefully. So this is the same point he's making. He's restating it. So he says, do not remain in the dualistic state. So the question occurs to us, what does he mean by this dualistic state? What is the dualistic state? It involves, as the beginning of the sutra tells us, having preferences. So when you have preferences, when you're picking and choosing, when you're liking and disliking, then you're in a dualistic state. When we look at our minds carefully as we do Zen training, we see that they are made up almost entirely of beliefs, habits, views, fixed positions. All this mental stuff is going on all day long, judging. I like it, I don't like it. This is good, that is bad. So the purpose of Zen training really is to try to loosen these traces of this and that, of right and wrong. What we ought to be learning in our Zen training is to hold all these dualisms more lightly, to be more open to the reality of each moment. So why does getting rid of these preferences, these dualities as he calls them, why does this make us more open to the moment? When we have preferences in our heads, we're always making a judgment. We're making a choice. And we're always having certain expectations of what this particular moment contains, what it's about. And so when we do this and we're in the moment, we tend to see what we expect to see. Our expectations, we tend to fulfill them whether they're there or not. And when we do this, we're not completely open to what really is, because we've already made up our minds of what is happening there. So this is one of the importance of not having preferences. We know that our practice is about being present in each moment. And we see now that these preferences keep us from being present completely in each moment. So the question is, how do we get from the way our minds seem to work naturally, that is, having preferences, making judgments, how do we get from there to the way that Sang San tells us we need to be, that is, having no preferences? It's a big leap from one to the other. The best way to cultivate no preferences is Zazen. In fact, sometimes Zazen is referred to as choiceless awareness. No preferences, choiceless. No picking and choosing. And this is why Zazen is the foundation of our practice, particularly in the Soto school. A lot of emphasis on Zazen. Because Zazen facilitates a mind of no preferences. How does it do that? Well, when we sit in Zazen, we notice the processes of our minds in a more detailed way than we ordinarily do when we're just walking around in our life. We may notice that we talk to ourselves in the following way. This is bad sitting. I shouldn't be thinking thoughts like this. I shouldn't be thinking at all. So often what we find is that we spend a lot of our Zazen period scolding ourselves. We just feel that we're not doing it right. So this kind of thing is dualistic thinking. It's having preferences. It's making judgments. You know, it's often said that the first step in solving a problem is to realize that there is a problem. So the part of Zazen that makes us aware of what our minds are like before we work with them in our practice is recognizing the problem. I remember when I first encountered a Zen monastery and sat on a cushion, I was completely amazed. I had no idea that I talked to myself all day long. And I had no idea what the content of this talk was. I think there are people who are maybe more aware than I was at that point. But I was like agog. So you see the problem. The purpose of sitting is to help us recognize this duality in our minds and finally to experience that aspect of our minds which is not dual, which has no preferences. That part of our minds is inherent in each one of us. That's Buddha nature. And it's accessible to each one of us through Zazen. In our Zazen, thoughts arise. All kinds of thoughts come up and little bits of fluff and questions and all kinds of stuff. So having no preferences is not necessarily about having no preferential thoughts. That's important. You know, the mind thinks and preferential thoughts come up. So what's the difference? It's more about how we treat those thoughts, how we regard them as they occur. What we often do is we get hooked by them. We take them on, we give them power, we follow them up with more thoughts. But after a while, at least at times in our Zazen, and finally, hopefully in our lives, we begin to just view these thoughts, preferential or not, as kind of neutral events. When we have a thought, we don't have to add another thought to it. We don't have to validate the thoughts by investing them with emotion. You know, if something floats up, I don't like him, it can just be, I don't like him. You don't have to think, oh, I really don't like him. He's really a lousy guy, you know, and start to get going on it and embroider it. We just watch it rise, and if we just do that, it will fall away. So This is what happens when we sit. Things arise, and if we don't take them up, they fall away. Something else arises, we don't take it up, it falls away. According to Buddhism, this is the law of the entire universe. Things arise, and things fall away. This is the basis on which Buddhism says everything changes. Rising and falling away. This whole process, after a while in our practice, becomes easy and natural. Maybe not all the time, but some of the time. The whole process of Zen training is meant to loosen this power of thought, to help us get rid of these traces of right and wrong. We gradually learn to hold all thoughts, feelings, and sensations lightly. Not that we don't have them, it's that we don't invest them with a lot of emotion and meaning. And when we do this, that's when we have more energy and more attention to be open to each moment. And this is why Zazen is the foundation of our practice. When we learn shikantaza is just sitting. No techniques, no counting the breath. Just sitting and watching. Awareness of what arises. We find that we don't have to do anything very special to avoid all these pursuits of duality that Sang San is talking about here. Thoughts come, thoughts go. We don't like them or dislike them. We don't judge them as good or bad. We breathe in, we breathe out. It's only when we become trapped in our thoughts and in preferences that we get caught up in dualism. It's important to realize that when we say have no preferences, it doesn't mean that we don't have preferential thoughts. Things come up, But the trick is that we don't buy them. We don't hold on to them. So the second line of this first couplet goes like this: if there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind will be lost in confusion. So what the sutra is saying here is that even a trace, even a little bit, even a smidgen of this and that, of right and wrong, matters. He has said the same thing in the first part of this. He said, make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. He's saying the same thing here. Same thing. He says, even a teeny bit. What he's saying here is there is no partial oneness. We are either one or we are separate. You can't be almost one or a little bit separate. It's like being a little bit pregnant. Not possible, If you're separate, you're separate. If you're one, you're one. When we see our preferences but don't give them weight, then there are essentially no traces of this and that, of right and wrong. This is how we lessen the confusion of our mind. He tells us all the way through here that we're going to be confused if we don't get rid of our preferences. And so it's this duality that confuses us. We don't have to always be rendering judgments and pondering choices when we get rid of preferences. We can see the world as whole and rest in a place where choices and differences fade away. If you just think about how many choices and decisions and judgments you make all day long, virtually every thought pretty much is a judgment. Gee, it's nice today. I feel lousy. That tree looks nice. That flower's dying. All day long. We don't have to do that. It gets a little easier when we don't always have to be coming to decisions and judgments. Ultimately, we can't confine our non-dualistic states to Zazen, of course. Our job is to bring that openness to the rest of our lives as well. So the lines we're working on today continue. He says, although all dualities come from the one, do not be attached even to this one. All dualities come from the one. Do not be attached even to this one. Basically, he's using dualities in one, but you could also use relative and absolute, relative and empty. Different terms for pretty much the same thing. So he's warning us here, do not be dualistic. He also warns us, do not be attached to oneness. The other side of dualism is oneness. So he's just gone on for lines and lines telling us not to have any preferences, not to be dualistic. And so here he's saying, but don't think that you can go around and always be in the one either. Can't always be in the absolute. If you prefer one side to the other, even if the view that you cling to is oneness, then it becomes a kind of dualism. This is because you're making a judgment. You're preferring oneness. You're thinking that oneness is better than dualism. You're picking and choosing the side of oneness over the side of duality or the relative. This is a Zen student disease, you know. As soon as we experience oneness, we think it's better than duality. And so we get caught up in that whole thing. So he's saying, no, be careful. Neither side is completely right all by itself. You know, sometimes in Zen we call the relative side, we call it delusion or illusion. You know, it's delusive or illusory only in the sense that it's not how we think it is. We have to look a little further into it and see how it really is. But it doesn't mean it's a delusion because it isn't there. It's there. You know? So you can't just like wipe it away and say, okay, I'm going to be in oneness. Can't do it. So what he's saying to us here is whatever side is appearing at a particular moment, we don't call one side right and the other side wrong. We don't call one side holy and the other side profane. Whatever point of view we take, whether it's relative or absolute, we have to be okay with it. It's fine. So he's warning us about being dualistic here, about not getting caught up in oneness. That's one way of being dualistic, getting caught up in oneness. So if we attach to existence, this is a term that some people use, existence means the relative. If we get caught up in the relative, with that comes a lot of other things, the world of desire, the world of likes and dislikes. In this world, there's a lot of suffering that we create. This human suffering is added to the inescapable pain that's involved in life. Zen sometimes makes a distinction between suffering and pain. If you break your leg, that's pain. If you get totally upset and anxious about it and cause yourself a lot of emotional pain to go along with it, that's suffering. So what he's saying here is with that world comes certain tendencies which can cause suffering. Because we're mired in a very small point of view, and we're not seeing the relative physical world, the world of form, properly. But if we attach to emptiness, to the absolute, then, or what he's calling here oneness, we expose ourselves to another risk. And that's the risk of despair, of alienation, of passivity, and futility. Because in this world, everything is of equal value. Sometimes we say everything is empty. So if everything is of equal value, the risk is we say, what the hell? I mean, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's the same anyway. And people have certainly done this. It has gone as far as some people saying, oh, it doesn't matter if you kill somebody because everyone is empty and there's no person there to kill anyway. So this is very skewed thinking, but it's a risk of being caught up in the world of oneness. So what he's saying here is don't get caught in relativism, don't get caught in oneness. The results of attaching to either one of these are different. But as far as waking up to the truth, to reality, they're equally mistaken because neither one is true all by itself. The point of Zen practice is somehow to realize both sides and be able to fit them together, keep both of them in your mind at the same time. The thing about oneness is it's always temporary. Even if we want to attach to oneness and be always in a state of oneness, we can't. Whether it's a state of meditative oneness or it's some kind of oneness that you're having with a situation or an object in life, it always ends. Why does it end? Because thoughts and discriminations and dualisms come up. They always arise again. This is the nature of our mind, of our humanity. Therefore, we have to learn to be comfortable with both oneness and duality. We can't get rid of duality by wiping it out once and for all, so we have to learn to be okay with it. And oneness is not superior to duality. When we're no longer bothered by dualism, then we cease to be alienated from ourselves and from our world. So he continues then, after warning us, don't be attached to oneness either. He goes back again and says, when the mind exists undisturbed in the way, nothing in the world can bother us. What a promise, huh? And when a thing can no longer bother, it ceases to exist in the old way. So he is making a big promise here that nothing can bother us. He says when the mind exists undisturbed, that's when nothing bothers us. So what he's saying is when it's undisturbed by preferences, then nothing can bother you. I mean, you can see why preferences bother you, make your life agitated and regretful. If you have a preference, I'm going to take a vacation to Rome next month, and then it doesn't happen, you're cast into depression or stress, right? But if you don't care, it's not so important. You plan it, but it doesn't happen, and you're okay with staying home. Then nothing bothers you. So one way to think about this statement that nothing can bother us is to observe how our minds and emotions react in our lives. And in Zazen as well, sometimes we can notice this. How do we get bothered? Well, we get bothered very often. Things do bother us. We're touchy. We rise to the bait. We get angry. We fume. We hold grudges. We judge ourselves and others very harshly sometimes for not much at all. So why is this? Why do we do this? Because we think we have a self to protect. Because we have opinions, ideas, and judgments that we hold on to. And because we just want to be right. All these things come out of preferences. And they can all disappear when we give up our preferences. So giving up our ideas and opinions is very difficult. That's why we don't do it. Also, it shores up the self. We want to hold on to that sense of self. But, Buddhism tells us that we have to even give up the ideas and principles of Buddhism. There's that whole kind of metaphor that when you cross to the other side to enlightenment, it's on the other side of the river. You get on this side where you're unenlightened. You get on the raft, which is Buddhist teachings. You cross the river, you hop out on the other shore. Presto, change over, you're enlightened. And what Buddhism tells us, you throw away the raft, throw away the teachings. Don't cling on to these ideas and things that got you there. When you're on the other shore, you're free. You don't need these ideas anymore because your enlightenment is your life. So this is a challenge for us, Once we found Buddhism and we have all these ideas and everything, we want to hold on to them. We want to tell our friends about them. We want to feel superior because we have them and so on and so forth. But, all of this is only words, right? Words and ideas, words and ideas. So why not let them go? When we cling on to words and ideas, we're actually living in our heads. And Zen, the basic teachings of Zen say, let go of words and ideas, words and letters. Isn't that what Bodhidharma said? He went to China to bring Zazen, a teaching outside words and letters, pointing directly to the human mind. That's what he said he brought. So that's our inheritance. And just keep in mind that it doesn't mean that we have no ideas or opinions. We do. Can't live without them. But what it means is that we hold them lightly. We don't, stake our life on them. We're able to say, perhaps, well, maybe you're right, to somebody else. Sen-san continues, and when a thing can no longer bother, it ceases to exist in the old way. What seeing the oneness of the relative and the absolute point of view can do for us is help us to see that all those thoughts and ideas are not so important. We learn to be less attached to them. We still have them, but they seem not so important. And that is why things bother us less. They cease to exist in the old way as irritants and problems. So the last lines of the section we're going to do today go like this. When no discriminating thoughts arise, the mind ceases to exist. When thought objects vanish, the thinking subject vanishes, just as the mind. Things are objects because of the mind. The mind is such because of things. So this is thorny logic here. When we don't have discriminating thoughts, mind is empty of content. I often make the distinction. There's mind, which Suzuki Roshi calls big mind, and there's the contents of your mind, which is the thoughts and the feelings and all that stuff. And these are two different things. Mind, big mind, is totally empty, totally serene, totally quiet. That's its nature. That's how it is. But then there's all the contents, which seem busy and unquiet and filled with storm and stress and all of that. So mind is always empty. It's always quiet. But we can't experience this because of the thoughts. Because we're focused on the content, not the mind. But a kind of irony is that it's only the fact that the mind has contents that allows us to realize that the mind is there. Because it's empty, there's no way we can feel it without something in it. Likewise, when we look at the universe, from the absolute point of view, we say all things are empty. So then there would be no consciousness of solid, permanent things. So there would be no objective world to which we could oppose a self. So I was talking to Dylan recently. He was telling me about his experiences in like a flotation tank, And what happens is because they cut off all sensory feedback, the mind reacts in funny ways because we're not getting any feedback, anything to oppose ourselves to. So here's the thing to remember, that the absolute or emptiness cannot exist alone. There is no emptiness floating around out there all by itself. Can't happen. Emptiness exists only in conjunction with form, with the relative. It is always a quality of a form. There has to be a form for there to be emptiness. This is why the Heart Sutra says each and all the subjective and objective spheres are related and at the same time independent, related yet working differently. The identity of relative and absolute tells us that the two sides are like two arrows meeting in midair, like a box and its lid. Each needs the other to be a whole. This is why our practice requires us to put it together. So this is why the self vanishes when there's nothing to oppose it to. The object vanishes when there's no self, because it takes two things. He says, in this emptiness, the two are indistinguishable, and each contains in itself the whole world. That's the box and its lid, the two arrows. If you do not discriminate between coarse and fine, you will not be tempted to prejudice and opinion. Because form is emptiness and emptiness is form, either side will contain the other, and either side will represent a whole. Coarse and fine here refer to the absolute and the relative. Coarse is the relative, fine is the absolute. Why he calls it that. When we can see the necessity of both relative and absolute, we can see how preferences disappear and how prejudice and opinion doesn't tempt us. This is how a non-discriminating mind works. This is how it becomes clear about dualism. Yet we know that all day long, every day, we're called on to make distinctions between coarse and fine. We have to pick, we have to choose. I heard recently somebody say, in regard to the election, the lesser of two evils is still less evil. And, this is the kind of discrimination we have to make. If you choose not to vote at all, which some people are doing, that's a decision. You don't avoid a decision by avoiding a decision. You made another kind of decision. Though we have to make these distinctions, we do it with awareness of each side. Sang-san wants us to be both more alert and more relaxed about how we work with the many dualisms of our lives. He tells us they are not really so dual after all, because each contains the other. But we have to see that in order to work with them skillfully. When you put together these dualisms, absolute and relative, and you see each thing, each form, in the light of its larger meaning, the absolute, then you are seeing suchness. You're seeing the form in all its particularity and individuality. And you're seeing it in the light of eternity. You could call it eternity, though Zen doesn't use that term. So this is why we have to put it together. And this is why the Faith Mind Sutra keeps flopping back and forth between telling us not to be dual and then telling us not to get caught up in one either. So let me just read you these lines again, just the ones we had today. I'm going to read. I don't want to read all of them. Make sure. Okay, here we are. I need page 2 here. Here we are. So here's the lines we talked about today. Do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such persons carefully. If there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind will be lost in confusion. Although all dualities come from the one, do not be attached even to the one. When the mind exists undisturbed in the way, nothing in the world can bother us. And when a thing can no longer bother, it ceases to exist in the old way. When no discriminating thoughts arise, the mind ceases to exist. When thought objects vanish, the thinking subject vanishes, just as the mind vanishes, objects vanish. Things are objects because of the mind. The mind is such because of things. Understand the relativity of these two and the unity of emptiness. In this emptiness, the two are indistinguishable, and each contains in itself the whole world. If you do not discriminate between coarse and fine, you will not be tempted to prejudice and opinion.